Hello everyone, Tally and Farrell here from Board of It, and today we're going to be throwing a spotlight on Res Arcana, a game we very much enjoy playing but feel has perhaps gone a little bit under the radar. Whilst it's rated highly on Board Game Geek, we rarely see it mentioned or discussed. In Res Arcana, you'll play as a unique mage trying to become the most powerful magical user in all the land, through the playing of magical creatures, monuments, artefacts, and places of power. So, Mr. Wizard, how do you decide who is the most powerful magic user in all the land?
Why, the first of us to get to 10 victory points, of course.
And what does that have to do with magic?
Come on, guys! Moment to moment, it's an engaging, card-driven engine builder with plenty of resource management thrown in for good measure. You'll be working with your 5 classical magical essences. You've got your gold.
Classic.
You've got your life, your death, your calm, and your elan. I honestly had to look up what elan is because I thought it was like some weird medieval word for something. But as far as I can figure out, the designer obviously just went to this hair salon and named it after it because he loves his haircuts. But no, seriously though, after further digging, I discovered that elan is actually a word which means enthusiasm, style, and energy, which, to be fair, does make sense in the context of this game. Every day's a school day. What? Setup's done already? Man, that was a quick setup. Well, I've got to finish my tea, so why don't we just slow that down and I'll finish this and get back to you. In Res Arcana, to win, you'll need to be the first player to get 10 VP, or if multiple players do this in the same round, then you need to be the player with the most VP. There's a lot of different ways to do this, as Res Arcana is a bit of a sandbox game and your strategy is up to you and the cards you get. You'll begin with 2 mages, which are your characters if you like, and a deck of artifact cards. You'll look at your artifact cards, you'll look at your mages, and you'll try and pick one mage that will create synergy. You'll discard the other one. Then you'll shuffle your artifact deck, draw 3 cards from it, put your mage into play, and you're ready to begin. There's also an advanced variant where you can draft these artifact cards amongst the players, giving you more control over your synergy and potential route to victory.
At the start of each round, you'll take any income and begin with a starting player. On each turn, you'll take 1 action. You could pay the cost and put a card into play, you could take an action on a card, or you could buy something from the shared marketplace, if you will, etc. And then when you can no longer do anything, or if you just don't want to, you pass. It's very much a system of gaining resources to play more cards, to get more resources, play more cards, get more resources, to eventually buy VP providing cards and tiles.
Some of your artifact cards will give you VP, although this is somewhat rare, or you could go and buy some monuments. You pay for these with gold, which is the most valuable essence, but they give you static VP and often either an income or an action. However, a lot of the VPs in this game will come from these places of power. They have a high upfront cost, but once you get them, they usually give you an action that each round will let you put 1 resource on top of them. And each resource on top of these places of power is usually worth 1 VP. So you generate more and more resources and generate more and more VP. Also, you can pass first and you'll get the start player token, and this is worth 1 VP if you're scoring.
Moment to moment, what makes Res Arcana engaging is that each round in each game will give you your own personal puzzle to work out. How should you use your personal deck to get the most VP? How do you combine your cards and your mage? Which place of power should you go for, or should you focus on making gold and buying monuments? What makes Res Arcana consistently interesting is the actions of the artefacts and your mage, which are weird and wonderful, so provide many different directions to pursue. Different games are going to play out in different ways, so it always keeps it fresh.
Would you say fresh to death?
Fresh to death.
Fresh to death. And this freshness adds a tremendous amount of replayability. Because everything's card and tile based, anything that comes into play when you set up, shuffled, randomized, and this means that every game you play will have a different combination of places of power, monuments, artifacts, and mages than you've seen before. It's really cool. You'd think that this might get confusing, or it might be unbalanced, or maybe you just wouldn't even know what direction to take. But I'm glad to say none of this is true due to great game design. The random combination of mage and artifact cards always feels balanced in relation to other players. We've never played a game of this and someone's lost and kind of everyone at the table has commiserated with them and said something like, yeah, well, you got really unlucky, mate. You had a bad deck. It just hasn't happened. And this is because there's just so many routes open to all the players. And what you generally do is you'll take the first round of the game and you'll try and put one or two cards into play. Then you'll step back and you'll look at those and your mage and you'll think, what direction can I take? And Res Arcana is terrific at pointing you in that direction intuitively. You might go, well, I can produce a gold every round, so I should go for the monuments. Or you might say, I'm going to be getting a lot of elan and death, so I should go for this place of power, which I need that for. It's just really elegant design.
One mechanic that we haven't touched upon yet are these magic items. At the start of your turn, you'll pick one from the supply, and as soon as you pass, you have to trade it for another one from the supply. They provide a variety of actions, from simple gain a resource to more in-depth strategic options. It's a mechanic we really like because, number one, the magic items give you access to options to expand your strategy that you wouldn't have otherwise had. And number two, the fact that you have to take a new magic item at the start of your turn adds further weight to the pass mechanic in Res Arcana. If you pass early, you'll get to go first in the next round, and you could just snag a magic item that you wanted before anyone else. But is it at the cost of maximising all of your turns in the previous round?
And just generally in this game, there's a lot of these micro strategies, and it basically makes what is essentially a small box game feel big and expansive just because of the options available to you. Now, just looping back to these actions, there's a lot of symbology in this game. It's on every card, it's how the cards tell you what you're doing. There's limited text, and this is fine, and you get handy kind of player guides, there's one for everyone, and it takes you through it. It's not that complicated to learn. But what will happen is that here and there you'll come across complex cards and you'll look at them and they just won't really mean anything, or you can't figure out what they're trying to do or what the benefit would be. And everything kind of stops and you open this up for debate and you discuss it and you check the rules, and it really slows down the game. And what this game is crying out for is just like a separate appendix where they have one or two sentences on every card in the game and tell you what it does. And what's annoying is they have this in a very limited way for a very limited number of cards. And ironically, these cards have never been a problem. So, you know, it's not a big deal. It doesn't happen a lot. But because this game is very quick moving, it really puts the brakes on the fun of the game when this happens. And if somebody misreads a card that you've all misunderstood and they get an advantage and win, it's just not very fun.
Now, if you want interactivity, this might not be the game to get. For the majority of the game, you're going to be working on your own personal engine. On the one hand, it means it's great at any player count because the field doesn't change too much. But if you don't like Euro-style games where you all just work on your own personal stuff and then count up at the end, you might not like this.
Yeah, you see, there's only like 3 different ways to interact with other players, and none of them are that meaningful. There's the classic, you know, you've got all the stuff in the middle that's shared and someone can take something you want before you get it, or vice versa. You've got certain cards that, you know, when you use them, they give everyone resources. And lastly, you can attack other players. And what this looks like is a card that'll say turn and, you know, attack. for 1 or 2 life, and basically every other player has to give up 1 or 2 life. But often these cards will also say, you know, they can ignore if they do X. And if they can't ignore, or if they don't have any life, they lose 2 essences for each life they would have lost.
Now, we fully admit it might just be the way we play, but it's the only mechanism in Res Arcana that feels tacked on or out of place. Usually, most players have a card that lets them ignore an attack, so it usually goes something like this.
Attack.
Ignore. Attack.
Ignore. It's a nice idea to try and inject some interactivity and, you know, be able to set other players back and kind of hassle them. But like a lot of nice ideas in practice, it just doesn't quite work. The expansion looks at Tenebrae is mostly a more stuff expansion, and everything's just going to slot right into the base game, no problems. And to be honest, I probably couldn't tell you which Place of Powers, Monuments cards were from the base game and which from the expansion, which is pretty seamless design. This expansion will also let you play with a 5th player, and it incorporates a new scroll mechanic. This scroll mechanic doesn't really resonate with us. So essentially there's a new magical item which allows you to take a scroll, and I think you pay 1 essence, and you get the scroll and then you can use it like a magical item, but the only difference is you can keep it for as long as you want. You don't have to give it back at the end of that round. However, this is just magical items with extra steps, and even worse, the scrolls are generally just pretty meh and uninteresting in what they do. They very rarely get used in our games. But one good thing is that all of this expansion fits nicely into the original box, so you don't need 2 boxes cluttering up your house. And what we would say as a final word is, if you really enjoy Res Arcana, definitely get the expansion. If you haven't played Res Arcana, then play it first and see if you like it, and then get the expansion. This definitely is an expansion that you need to have to make the original game better. Lastly, the components. There's some great components here. You know, these essences are all wooden tokens and all custom. You've got the magical items and places of power, which are extremely thick and they're coated and very strong. All the cards are high quality, but more importantly, the storage solution is very simple, elegant, and easy to discern what goes where. It's really terrific, and it means that setup is only going to take a minute or 2. And honestly, this is one of the highest quality in terms of the components, small box, medium box games that we've played.
So, final thoughts. We fully recommend Res Arcana if you're into Euro engine building type games. The myriad of routes to victory and the thrill of it being a race keeps players engaged throughout despite the lack of interactivity. Has a relatively good price tag for what you get, excellent storage solutions, and the setup is lightning quick. We will say, however, that it's not a game that would be the main event of an evening for us, but more something to get out before or after the main event for a shorter, more relaxing experience.
Now, if you're looking for some interactivity in your games, or if you're not a fan of the more solo aspects of Euros, Res Arcana isn't the game that's going to convince you otherwise, and you should probably give it a miss. However, if you're already a fan of Res Arcana, then we definitely recommend the expansion, which includes basically more replayability, and it lets you play with more friends. Well, thanks for watching. That's our thoughts on Res Arcana, and we'd really appreciate it if you enjoyed this, if you subscribe, comment, or like. Thanks for watching.
Bye bye.